Welcome to Help for New Supervisors, using behavioral skills training to teach staff, caregivers, and other service providers. Let's start by looking at our learning objectives. By the end of this course, you will be able to identify the basic tenets of behavioral skills training, known as BST, state the behavior principles that underlie the BST model, outline the main research that supports the usage of the BST method, describe how using BST aligns with best practices as per the BCBA task list 4th edition, list the steps needed to implement BST procedures for a specific ABA application, demonstrate the usage of a technological BST task analysis to competency, compare and contrast the usage of BST across diverse training populations, and choose adaptations or additions to be applied to the BST model to best support your learners. So, what is BST? BST stands for Behavioral Skills Training. It is an evidence-based skill teaching procedure that uses 4 instructional procedures to train a person to acquire useful skills: instructions, modeling, rehearsal, and feedback. Some possible targets include social skills or job-related skills. Typically, BST is used to teach skills that lend themselves to role-playing. Here is a visual that helps depict the BST process. You can see that the process usually starts with instructions, is followed by modeling, then rehearsal, and finally feedback. First, let's look at the basics of instructions. When providing instructions, you need to describe the appropriate behavior for the learner in a vocal and written format, make instructions as technological as possible, specify each component within the chain, and make sure that the components are presented in the specific order. Here are some added strategies for successfully providing instructions during the BST procedure. Make sure that the instructions are not too complex or too simple. Have the instructions presented by someone that the learner considers credible. Consider pairing instructions and modeling. Consider having the learner recite the instructions after they're provided. And lastly, remember that for instructions to be most effective, rehearsal needs to occur immediately following their presentation. Following these guidelines should help your learner best receive your instructions. Second, let's look at the basics of modeling. When using modeling, you need to ensure that the correct behavior is demonstrated for the learner, that the learner imitates the model, and that the model can be live, meaning in person, or symbolic, meaning previously recorded or cartoon-based. Here are some added strategies for successfully using modeling during the BST procedure. Ensure that an imitative repertoire is present before starting. Have the learner see the model come into contact with positive reinforcement for emitting the target behavior. Have the model resemble the learner. Also remember that prerequisite skills need to be considered for the behavior being modeled. The context of the presentation of the model needs to be correct, and the model should be presented with generalization in mind. Following these guidelines should help your learner get the most out of modeling. Third, let's look at the basics of rehearsal. The rehearsal stage provides an opportunity to practice the behavior following the model and instructions, allows for the assessment of the effectiveness of the modeling and instruction steps, provides the opportunity for the learner to contact reinforcement, and allows the learner to change his or her behavior as a result of an error correction procedure. Here are some added strategies for successfully using rehearsal during the BST procedure. Rehearse the behavior in the appropriate context, using either in situ or role-playing opportunities. Use shaping procedures when targeting learning complex behaviors. This means choose situations that are easy to master before moving on to more complex situations. Be sure to use reinforcement and correction procedures, and have a competency level established and reached before moving forward. Following these guidelines should help to make the rehearsal most beneficial. Fourth, let's look at the basics of feedback. When providing feedback, have it immediately follow the learner's rehearsal. Involve praise or other reinforcers for correct performance and correction for errors. Include further instructions as needed. And consider the use of differential reinforcement. This means varying degrees of reinforcement delivered based on demonstrations of varying components of the skill. Here are some added strategies for successfully using feedback during the BST procedure. Remember that immediacy is key. Some praise or other reinforcers should always be providing. Praising effort counts. Feedback should work to make rehearsing a reinforcing activity. And be as specific as possible in that feedback. Always provide praise before the correction feedback. If there are a lot of errors to be corrected, consider using shaping as needed. And overall, be positive. Following these guidelines should help make feedback most valuable.